The absence of Kelsey Plum and Nefisa Collier from recent high-level WNBA contract negotiations has drawn significant scrutiny. While the league was prepared to finalize a historic agreement in New York, two of its primary veteran leaders were not present. This decision coincided with Caitlin Clark appearing as an NBC analyst, where her professional demeanor stood in contrast to the reported internal tensions within the league. Media figures like Colin Cowherd have suggested that the veterans' actions are damaging their public image, framing their behavior as a hindrance to the league's progress. For months, the WNBA Players Association has publicly argued that they are being treated unfairly by ownership. They have maintained a narrative that no viable financial offer was on the table. However, reports later indicated that a substantial proposal had been made, including average salaries exceeding $500,000 and maximum contracts reaching $1.3 million. The package also included health benefits and charter flights. The decision by Plum and Collier to remain in Miami rather than attending these critical meetings in New York has led many to question the current state of player leadership, especially as the league now provides private travel. Colin Cowherd has observed that the league's established stars appear to be struggling with the rapid shift in the WNBA's economic landscape. For 2 decades, players traveled on commercial flights and stayed in modest accommodations while playing in partially filled arenas. Since the arrival of Caitlin Clark, the league has seen a transition to private jets and high-end hotels. Cowherd argues that instead of acknowledging this growth, some veterans have responded with hostility toward the rookie responsible for the increased revenue and viewership. He suggested that these players should recognize that their improved financial standing is a direct result of the new interest in the game. The negotiations are further complicated by a potential conflict of interest involving Plum and Collier's role in founding a rival league, Unrivaled. If the WNBA season is delayed or disrupted by these labor negotiations, the Unrivaled league stands to benefit. This dynamic suggests that the individuals leading the WNBA's bargaining efforts are simultaneously invested in a competing venture. Critics argue this represents a significant risk to rookies and role players who rely entirely on the WNBA's stability for their careers. This tension has also manifested on the court. During the recent season, the Indiana Fever reportedly increased security measures to ensure player safety following a series of physical altercations. This included the presence of Sophie Cunningham, an athlete with a long-standing background in martial arts. Observers noted an unusual frequency of flagrant fouls and physical play directed at Clark, which Cowherd described as a desperate attempt to suppress a player whose popularity has eclipsed the league's veteran stars. A central point of contention in the labor dispute is the union's demand for 30% of gross revenue. To provide context, the WNBA has lost an estimated $300 million over the last 30 years. Ownership has offered a deal consisting of 70% of net revenue, which is generally considered a favorable split in professional sports. A gross revenue demand would require the league to pay out a percentage of all earnings before covering essential operating costs like travel, arena lighting, and staff salaries. Financial analysts suggest that such a model could jeopardize the league's long-term financial viability. The contrast in professional approaches was evident during recent broadcasts. Caitlin Clark has remained focused on the game, expressing confidence in the negotiation process without criticizing her colleagues or the league. Meanwhile, the Players Association has implemented a moratorium, preventing players from communicating with their coaching staffs. While Clark continues to act as a brand ambassador and driver of record-breaking TV ratings, the veteran leadership has adopted an increasingly confrontational stance. The stakes for the 2026 season are high. The Indiana Fever has built a competitive roster featuring Clark, Aaliyah Boston, and Kelsey Mitchell. However, the current labor standoff and the union's policy of cutting off team communication threaten to stall the league's momentum. If a deal is not reached, it may not be due to a lack of available funding, but rather the internal friction between the league's new stars and its established veteran core. Ultimately, the future of the WNBA depends on its ability to manage this transition into a high-revenue era. The current dispute highlights a divide between the players driving the league's new economy and those who have led the union for years. As the league faces this critical juncture, it remains to be seen if the veteran leadership will embrace the growth brought by new talent or continue a strategy that risks the league's newfound stability. The negotiation impasse reached a critical turning point on February 17, 2026, when the WNBA Players Association submitted a formal counterproposal. This document represents a slight pivot from the union's original stance, lowering their demand for a share of the league's gross revenue to 27.5%, down from the previous 30%. Under this new framework, the percentage would start at 25% in the first year of the agreement and scale upward. While the union views this as a significant concession, the league office remains resistant. The WNBA's latest offer maintains a revenue-sharing model based on net profit rather than gross income, proposing that players receive over 70% of revenue after expenses are deducted. This technical distinction, gross versus net, is the central fault line of the dispute. From the league's perspective, paying out a fixed percentage of gross revenue before accounting for the massive costs of charter flights, arena leases, and expanded medical staffing could result in over $700 million in losses over the life of the deal. Conversely, the players argue that the net model allows for creative accounting that could suppress their actual take-home pay, especially as the league invests heavily in infrastructure for the new franchises in Portland and Toronto. The timing of this stalemate is particularly damaging to the league's expansion efforts. The Toronto Tempo and the Portland Fire are currently caught in a holding pattern. The expansion draft, originally scheduled to populate these rosters with talent for the 2026 season, has been indefinitely postponed. Without a finalized collective bargaining agreement, the league cannot set the salary cap, and without a salary cap, these new franchises cannot project their operating budgets or sign the veteran players necessary to build a competitive foundation. This delay also affects the traditional college draft and the free agency period. Approximately 80% of the current WNBA workforce is technically a free agent as of early 20. Players like Kelsey Mitchell, who averaged 20.2 points per game in a historic 2025 campaign, are currently unable to sign new contracts. For Mitchell, the dilemma is acute. She is eligible for a supermax contract that could reach $1 million in base salary under the league's proposed $5 million cap, yet the union is pushing for a cap closer to $10.5 million. This $5.5 million gap between the two proposals illustrates the fundamental disagreement over the league's current valuation. While the WNBA remains frozen, the unrivaled league has moved into the midpoint of its 2026 season in Miami. This 8-team 3x3 tournament has become a primary source of income and visibility for many of the players currently at odds with WNBA leadership. The irony is visible in the standings. Kelsey Plum and Aaliyah Boston's team, Phantom BC, recently clinched a playoff spot, and Chelsea Gray recently secured a $200,000 prize by winning the 1v1 tournament. However, the league is also navigating its first major injury crisis. Co-founder Nafisa Collier has been ruled out for the remainder of the unrivaled season. This highlights the physical toll of year-round professional play and adds a layer of complexity to the WNBA negotiations. The league office has expressed concern that the success of Unrivaled provides the union with a strike fund of sorts, giving veteran players the financial flexibility to walk away from the WNBA season if their demands are not met. This creates a perceived conflict of interest, where the players leading the labor strike are the same individuals profiting from a competing off-season venture. The financial data supporting the growth of the game is indisputable, yet interpreted differently by both sides. The WNBA is currently growing 8 times faster than the NBA did at a similar stage in its history. Gross revenue for 2026 is projected to reach approximately $680 million, driven by a new media rights deal valued at $200 million annually. This represents an 8-fold increase from the previous cycle. The league points to this growth as the reason they can now offer $1 million maximum salaries and $250,000 minimums, figures that were unimaginable just 3 years ago. However, the union remains focused on the long-term equity of the players. They argue that the current influx of capital, including massive expansion fees from cities like Cleveland, Detroit, and Philadelphia, should be considered part of the revenue pool. The league maintains that expansion fees are equity, not revenue, and are required to offset the operational losses sustained during the 3 decades of the league's existence. Internal dynamics within the Indiana Fever also reflect the broader league tension. Following a franchise record 24-win season in 2025, the team entered the current offseason with only 3 players under contract: Caitlin Clark, Aaliyah Boston, and Michaela Timpson. The Fever's success in 2025 was built on the synergy between Clark's elite playmaking and the interior dominance of Aaliyah Boston, who recorded a franchise record 6 consecutive double-doubles, yet the current moratorium on league business means that the Fever cannot finalize a deal to retain Kelsey Mitchell or address their needs in free agency. Head coach Stephanie White is currently restricted from direct contact with her players due to the union-mandated communication freeze. This policy, designed to maintain a unified front during bargaining, has effectively orphaned rosters, preventing young players from utilizing team facilities or receiving off-season coaching. The public perception of this conflict is increasingly shaped by the contrast between the veteran leadership and the new generation of stars. While Nneka Ogwumike and the WNBPA Executive Committee emphasize the struggle of past generations who played in substandard conditions, the current fan base is largely focused on the 2026 competitive landscape. Analysts have noted that the victim narrative, often promoted by the union's social media presence, does not align with the reality of a league that is now staying at five-star hotels and flying on private charters. The moratorium on business is seen by some as a strategic error that risks alienating the very fans who drove the recent ratings boom. If the May 8 season opener is delayed, the financial fallout will be felt across the entire ecosystem, including sponsorships, ticket sales, and television partnerships that are predicated on a full 40-game schedule. The demand for a gross revenue split is a strategy often seen in more established leagues like the NBA or NFL, where the revenue-to-expense ratio is more favorable. In the WNBA's current stage, where infrastructure costs are rising alongside viewership, a gross split is viewed by economists as a high-risk gamble. If the league were to agree to the union's demand for 27.5% of gross revenue, it would essentially be committing to a fixed payout regardless of whether the league turns a profit. In a year where expansion costs for Toronto and Portland are peaking, such a commitment could deplete the league's cash reserves. The union's counterargument is that the players are the product, and their compensation should not be dependent on the league's ability to manage its overhead. They believe that by forcing the league to pay a percentage of every dollar earned, they are ensuring that players benefit directly from the commercial growth they are generating. As the midpoint of February passes, the window for a standard training camp and preseason is closing. The 2026 season was intended to be a celebration of the league's 30th anniversary and its emergence as a global commercial powerhouse. Instead, it is being defined by a sophisticated labor dispute that pits the financial security of the league's future against the immediate demands of its current stars. The presence of Caitlin Clark as a neutral professional figure in the media has provided a steadying influence, yet even her presence cannot resolve the underlying mathematical disagreement. The outcome of these negotiations will dictate the financial structure of women's professional basketball for the next decade. If a compromise is reached, it will likely involve a hybrid model, one that protects the league from catastrophic losses while providing the players with a guaranteed share of the unprecedented revenue growth. Without such a deal, the momentum of the last 24 months risks being eclipsed by a period of sustained professional instability. The logistical consequences of the current deadlock extend far beyond the bargaining table in New York. The two newest franchises, the Toronto Tempo and the Portland Fire, are currently operating in a state of professional suspension. While both cities have successfully sold out their initial season ticket allocations, the actual composition of their rosters remains a mathematical impossibility. The expansion draft, which was designed to allow these teams to select protected players from existing rosters, cannot proceed until the league and the union agree on the total number of protected slots. Under the previous agreement, teams could protect 6 players. However, the union is now demanding that this number be reduced to 5, which would force established teams to expose more high-level talent to the expansion pool. The league office has countered that such a move would dilute the quality of the founding franchises at a time when they are finally seeing record-breaking attendance. This disagreement has left the general managers in Toronto and Portland unable to hire coaching staffs or secure training facilities, as they cannot provide a definitive start date for payroll. The financial pressure is also mounting on the incoming 2026 rookie class. Unlike the established veterans who have secondary income from the unrivaled league or high-value endorsement deals, the incoming draft picks are facing a period of total income uncertainty. The projected number 1 overall pick, Juju Watkins, is entering a league that currently has no established rookie scale for the 2026 season. Honor the 2025 rules, a top pick would earn roughly $76,000 in base salary. The union's proposal would see that figure jump to $180,000 immediately, while the league's offer sits at $120,000. This $60,000 discrepancy per player might seem minor in the context of a billion-dollar media deal, but when applied across the entire 144-player roster limit, it represents a significant shift in the league's long-term overhead. For the rookies, every week the negotiations continue is a week of lost training time and delayed marketing opportunities. They are essentially being asked to wait on the sidelines while the veterans fight for a revenue-sharing model that many rookies may not even benefit from if they do not secure a long-term roster spot. The complexity of the media rights deal also serves as a primary point of friction. In July 2024, the WNBA reached an agreement with Disney, NBC Universal, and Amazon worth approximately $2.2 billion over 11 years. This deal was predicated on the league playing a minimum of 40 games per season and featuring its most marketable stars in primetime windows. However, the contract contains force majeure clauses and performance benchmarks that could be triggered if the 2026 season is shortened or if marquee players sit out due to labor disputes. If the league fails to deliver the promised number of broadcasts, the networks have the right to withhold payments or renegotiate the annual fees downward. The union argues that the league is being overly cautious about these clauses to justify a lower salary cap. The league's perspective is that the $2.2 billion is not a liquid pile of cash available today. It is a long-term revenue stream that must be managed to ensure the league is still solvent in 2035. This leads to a deeper examination of the gross versus net debate that has paralyzed the process. To understand the union's insistence on gross revenue, one must look at the history of professional sports labor. In the late 1990s, the NBA moved toward a system of basketball-related income, or BRI, which is a form of gross revenue sharing. The WNBPA is attempting to mirror this success. However, the NBA was already a multi-billion-dollar enterprise with massive profit margins when it adopted that model. The WNBA is currently in a hypergrowth phase where expenses are outpacing revenue in the short term. For example, the league recently committed $25 million annually to charter travel, a move that was praised by the players but significantly increased the net costs of running the league. Under a gross revenue model, the players would receive their 27.5% cut of all ticket and jersey sales before that $25 million is paid to the charter companies. The league argues that this would effectively force the owners to subsidize the players' travel costs out of their own pockets rather than paying for it from the shared profits of the business. The internal rift within the Players Association is also becoming more visible. While the executive committee, led by veterans like Nneka Ogwumike, presents a unified front, the middle class of the league players who earn between $80,000 and $150,000 is reportedly concerned about the duration of the moratorium. These players do not have the massive Nike or State Farm endorsements that Caitlin Clark or Kelsey Plum enjoy. For them, a missed paycheck in May is not a strategic sacrifice, it is a personal financial crisis. There are reports of quiet dissent within the union, with some players questioning why the leadership is prioritizing a gross revenue ideological battle over the immediate implementation of the $1 million salary cap and improved medical benefits that the league has already conceded. The communication freeze has prevented these concerns from being voiced in a formal setting, as players are currently restricted from holding meetings with team personnel or league representatives without union supervision. The absence of a central authority to mediate this dispute has left the public narrative to be shaped by media personalities and social media discourse. Commissioner Kathy Engelbert has maintained a strictly corporate tone, emphasizing the league's transformational growth and its responsibility to the owners who kept the league afloat during its first 25 years of losses. On the other side, the union's social media strategy has focused on the value of the players, often using the hashtag #BetOnWomen. This messaging, while effective for brand building, does not address the specific actuarial challenges of the $300 million historical deficit. The reality of the situation is that the WNBA is currently a startup with a legacy debt, trying to act like a mature corporation. The unrivaled effect continues to cast a long shadow over the 2026 WNBA preparations. The 3x3 League has been a commercial success, but it has also created a physical and mental fatigue that is starting to show. Several players have reported minor soft tissue injuries during the Miami-based tournament, raising concerns that the WNBA season could begin with a significant number of stars on the injured list. If a player is injured while playing in a rival league during a WNBA labor dispute, who is responsible for their rehabilitation and salary? Under the current expired agreement, the WNBA is not liable for injuries sustained in unauthorized basketball activities. If the veterans continue to prioritize unrivaled as their primary source of income and competition, the WNBA risks becoming a secondary product in the minds of the athletes, which would further complicate the league's ability to market itself to sponsors. Sponsorship remains another critical area of concern. Major brands like AT&T, Google, and Deloitte have significantly increased their investment in the WNBA over the last 2 years. These corporations generally plan their marketing budgets 12 to 18 months in advance. The current instability is making it difficult for these partners to finalize their 2026 campaigns. If there is no certainty about which players will be on which teams, or if the season will even start on time, those marketing dollars may be diverted to other properties like the NWSL or the PGA Tour. The Caitlin Clark effect brought these sponsors to the table in record numbers, but the ongoing labor war is threatening to drive them away before their long-term contracts are signed. The rookie superstar finds herself in an impossible position. She is the primary driver of the revenue being discussed, yet she is being criticized by some of her own peers for her perceived silence on the union's more aggressive demands. The countdown to the May 8 season opener is now measured in weeks. Logistically, the league needs at least 21 days for a formal training camp and an additional 10 days for the preseason schedule. This means a deal must be ratified by early April to avoid a delay. If the deadline passes, the league faces a scorched earth scenario where the first month of the season is canceled. The financial impact of such a move would be catastrophic for the Indiana Fever, who have already sold out their entire home schedule at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. The loss of even 5 home games would result in millions of dollars in lost gate revenue and local broadcast fees. For a team that is finally on the verge of profitability, this is a setback that could take years to recover from. The resolution of this conflict will ultimately require a move away from the villain and victim rhetoric that has dominated the last 6 months. The league's offer of 70% net revenue is a legitimate attempt to share the rewards of the recent growth while protecting the business from systemic failure. The union's demand for a gross revenue stake is a legitimate attempt to ensure that the players, who are the sole reason for the league's existence, are treated as partners rather than employees. However, both sides are currently operating on the assumption that the other will blink first. As the 2026 season approaches, the focus is shifting away from the greatness on the court and toward the ledger sheets in the boardroom. If a compromise is not reached, the 30th anniversary of the WNBA will not be remembered for the rise of a new dynasty in Indiana or the expansion into Toronto. It will be remembered as the year the league's leadership failed to capitalize on the greatest opportunity in the history of women's sports.